About a month ago, Niels VDK came up with the idea of how to make a training lock out of a Euro cylinder, and he suggested that I make a video to show you guys how to do that. And not everybody has access to Euro cylinders, so I thought it'd be a good idea to expand it from not only Euro cylinders but to all the different lock types that we commonly see, and show you how to make training locks out of all of them. So you're going to need some basic tools, but I'll cover them as we go along. All right, the first one I'd like to talk about, and probably the most common lock that we all see, are these old mortise cylinders. Very cheap on eBay, and the pins are held in by this little metal plate. Oftentimes on the top here, these are peened or they're smashed a little bit to prevent that plate from coming out, but it doesn't matter. What we're going to do, we're going to use a little bit of violence, and we're going to take a regular bastard file, and we're just going to file the top of this flat until it looks something like this. Now you'll file it, and eventually this little plate, you'll file it down far enough, the plate will kind of pop off, and then immediately you're going to see all the little springs jump up. At that point, you can stop. You're going to probably damage some springs, but don't worry about it. You just need to get access to them. So let's just go one step at a time. On a Euro lock, you kind of want to do the same thing. This one is an Abyss. Nice lock. I'm just going to turn this into a training lock. Again, we need to file the top of this off with the same file, and on this one it takes about 15 minutes. You got to take quite a bit off because this is all solid brass. So it's going to take a while to file that down, and keep going until you get to this point, until the springs are just starting to become visible. You're probably going to damage a couple of them, but don't worry about it. When you get to this point, stop, and then take your X-Acto knife, and what we're going to do, we're going to just put it into the hole and try not to jab it into your hand, and just go around the inside of that hole until the spring pops up. And at that point, you can dump all that stuff out. Okay, do that to each of those holes and empty the cylinder of all the pins and the springs. Okay? That's how we get that one. Now, before we go to the next step, let's talk about another Euro lock cylinder. This is another style. It's not solid steel. You can actually see where the pins are because they put these brass inserts. These are tapered. Now, you can try to drill these out, but I'll be honest, you're probably not going to be very successful because they're tapered. When you start drilling, you'll drill part way, and then they'll smash down inside of there, and then you've got kind of a real mess. The easiest way to turn this into a training lock is simply to pick the lock, remove the core after you dump all the pins, and then you're left with a clean Bible. Then your pins are going to be in the top. Simply take a punch, stick your punch down inside of each of those, hit it with a hammer, push those brass plugs out into your hand, and then you got a nice clean core to start with, or a nice clean Bible to start with. Really cool blocks and very easy to do. A lot of us have access to these. These are kick cylinders, and they work a lot like the mortise cylinders. They have that steel plate on the top, and at the factory they peen them all in place, so it's kind of difficult to remove that plate, but we don't want that ridge anyway. Again, take your file the top of that off until it starts to look kind of like that. As soon as it does, again with the X-Acto, go ahead and cut the edge off, remove all the pins and all the springs, dump it out, remove your core. Again, you got a nice clean Bible to begin with. All right, let's talk about the finishing on these before we talk about threading. You can use the X-Acto to cut that edge off, but you really want something called a chamfer, which is kind of like a funnel on each of those. And the easiest way to do it is have a chamfer tool, and that's what this is. And it's designed especially to go in there, and you just give it a couple of turns, and it removes the sharp edges from the inside and kind of funnels each of those holes. We don't all have these, and that's okay. There's a cheap man's way to do it, and that would be just a normal drill. Just get a drill bit that's a little bit larger than those holes, put it in there, give it a couple of turns, and you can see some really fine metal filings coming off, and you have the exact same effect. It's not as pretty, but we don't care. Okay, I've showed you how to remove the top and get access to all the Bibles to begin the threading process. When we begin the threading, I guess it depends on whether you want to use metric or whether you want to use standard or imperial. These are the two sizes that we're looking at. If you want to use metric, and I prefer metric, I use the M4 by 0.7 millimeter, or if you want to use imperial, it's the number 6 and 32 threads per inch. They both look almost identical, and they're very close in diameter, not quite the same, but for our purposes, they're going to be close enough. Once you've got your tap, by the way, these only cost about $4 to $5 at Home Depot. You're going to need a handle. You can use pliers or vice grips, but the easiest way to do it is to get a pair of a T-handle. And then, if there is a secret, what you want to do is take a little bit of oil and put a drop of oil all that's along the top, and that'll make your threading a lot easier. You can do this by hand if you like. It really doesn't matter because the holes in the Bible are going to keep everything aligned properly. Or you can put it into a vise. So just stick it in there and just start threading it in. Go very slowly, and if it starts getting tight, back it out a few and then let some of the shavings fall out, and then just keep going. Now you don't want to thread it for the entire length of the hole, otherwise you're going to have a threaded chamber. That'd be a real mess for a beginner lock. You just want to give it a couple of turns just to put a couple of threads in the top of this cylinder. Once you've got that, and see if I can get the camera to cooperate here, you can see I've got the threads in there and I've got exactly what I want, about 2 or 3 threads. At that point, all we need to do is start putting in some plugs. So let me go ahead, just to make things neat, this is bothering me, just partially doing the job. Let me go ahead and thread all of these, and then I'll show you how to put the plugs in. Alright guys, you saw it doesn't take very long at all to thread these things. That oil really slicks things up. So okay, at this point, you're ready to put your plugs in there. And the plug that you're going to need if you use the Imperial, the 632, this is the Home Depot packet, 50 cents. These are stainless, and it's the 6-32 by 3/16 of an inch long. So for basically $1.50, you can have enough plugs for a 6-pin lock. Just thread them in there, get my fingers to work right, and a tiny little Allen wrench, and just thread that dude. Try not to cross thread it like I started to do there. Just thread it right in there, piece of cake. And just do it all the way across for all 6, and it should come out looking something, get some cooperation here, something like that I've already put the screws in on. That is the Imperial. If you want to use metric, you really want to use this one. It's the M4 by 5mm. I actually prefer these, and I installed them on this Sargent lock, and they come out looking really nice. Not just the color, they're just a little bit shorter, so they don't take up a lot of the room inside of the Bible, and also they use a slightly larger Allen wrench, so they're a little bit easier to work with, to thread in and thread out. Cost on these is about the same, $1.50, and you have yourself a training lock. All you need is a good foundation, a junker lock, and you can turn it in less than an hour of your time. Easily you can turn it into a training lock. Keep all of your springs and pins. A lot of your springs are going to be damaged, but your pins are perfectly functional, and you can use those to repin your lock. And you won't need no stinking key because you can pull these plugs if you get into a jam. If you don't have any of these pins, you can usually buy them. I think I got these from a guy on eBay. A lot of these are security pins. He sold this little bag, assorted plugs, springs, different security pins. I think it was $5, so pretty good bargain. And now I have a complete training lock for an hour of my time and $1.50 worth of set screws. Not a bad deal. So there you go, fellas. Make your own training lock. There's nothing to it. Thanks for your time. Stay safe. Stay legal. VDE, thanks for the idea. Appreciate it, guys.